Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. For those of you who are new, my name is Jen, and this of course is my channel. So I've never really done a story time on my channel, but I do have a story that I would like to share with you guys, and I am partly a little self-conscious and a little embarrassed to tell this story, but it also goes to show that you need to be proactive about your own health, about your own safety, and not to rely on others to keep you safe, and don't trust what others say just because they have a degree or they have knowledge in an area that they are supposed to know about. Just because they are acting in their job title description, you can't always rely on someone else to keep you safe. You have to rely on yourself and know what's right for yourself. So I'm going to entitle this video, I think, my working title in my head is My Most Embarrassing Moment as a Morbidly Obese Person, My 600-Pound Life Story. So let me give you a little bit of a backstory for those of you who are new or those of you who don't know my story. I am currently just under 500 pounds. I'm 492. And I started my journey many years ago. I was well over 600 pounds. And this is a picture of me. I don't even think this is my heaviest, but this is probably around my heaviest. Let me put my finger over that. I hope you guys can see. That was around. That little baby I'm holding is not my baby. That is a family member's child. But that was me around my heaviest. I probably got a little bit bigger than that, but that was me at well over 600 pounds. And that was a very miserable person. So also a little bit of backstory. I lost 200 pounds about 7 years ago, and I kept it off for about a year, and then I gradually started gaining it back. And when I started this journey again, I was very close to 600 pounds again. Over the course of the last probably about 8 to 10 months, I've lost almost probably 80 pounds. That has come off a lot slower than I would have liked because I had a lot of setbacks. I would lose 20 or 30 and then regain 35 and then lose 20 or 30 again and regain 20. So I've had ups and downs. It's only been recently that I've had success in keeping it off for a number of months so far, and I'm heading in the right direction. But if you'd like to know more about that, I have other videos talking about the current food plan that I'm following, the current method of eating that I'm following to lose weight. So getting back on track, 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 1 endometrial cancer as well as endometriosis. And as of right now, my cancer is stable. It is not progressing. Very fortunate. But at that time, the only option I had for treatment was an IUD that would help slow the growth and help to not let it progress, which it did its job. Over the course of 4 years, I lost, well, 3 years actually, I lost 2 IUDs. Some of this is going to be too much TMI for some people, so just bear with me until I get to the embarrassing part of the story. And that has nothing to do with female parts, I promise. So over the course, I had 1 IUD put in, and then almost 2 years to the day, it slipped out of place because I was having heavy bleeding again. That was my whole issue. It was why the IUD was put in place as well, is to control the heavy bleeding, to control my, like I said, the progression of the cancer, which it had done. It did its job very well. So when it slipped, I was sent back because I was having heavy bleeding again at the time. So I was sent back to the hospital, and because I live in a small town, I'm taken to my ER, and then my ER transfers me an hour away to a bigger city that is equipped to deal with bariatric patients and oncology in bariatric patients. So at that time I was taken to that hospital. I had another DNC and I had another IUD in place. That stayed in place for about a year, a little over a year. And then that one came completely out at home. And my doctor and I discussed the idea of having another one put back in, which would have been my third one in less than 5 years. And I felt that my body just did not want it in me for whatever reason. It was rejecting it. It was coming out for some reason. And honestly, I have not had good symptoms with it. I've had really bad symptoms with the IUD. I had severe pain. Of course, I'm having severe pain now, and I contribute that to the endometriosis, not the cancer. It could be a little bit of both. I don't know. But anyhow, me and my doctor agreed that for right now, since everything is okay, we would just leave the IUD out, and then if I started having more problems, then we would talk about in the future replacing it. But what I'm currently doing is trying to lose weight to get under at least 465 so I can be evaluated for surgery, to have a hysterectomy to take care of the cancer and the endometriosis completely. Now that I am under 500, I can have an MRI to talk about the prospects of having radiation to treat my cancer before I have surgery. But I haven't talked to my doctor. That was the plan before I had lost enough weight to have an MRI, because the MRI machine, you cannot be over 500 pounds. So when I go to my gynecologist / oncologist the next time, we will discuss that and set up that appointment. But I regress. So the second time I was taken, and this was a little over a year ago, about a year and a half ago, I was still very much over 500 pounds. I was probably about 580 at the time, 585, something like that. I was taken to the ER by our local fire department, and then I was transferred from the ER there, as always, to the other hospital about an hour away to have treatment. And my local fire department is very awesome. They're very patient. They're very understanding about me because of my size. They always send enough help to help lift me, because I am very self-conscious. I think it's a misconception that people have about obese people, that we don't care about other people, about how we affect others' lives. I know I am very self-conscious. I don't like to, if I go to someone's house, I'm just not going to plop down on their furniture and take a chance of breaking something. I understand that this is my weight, and I am not going to push this on somebody else and have somebody else pay for something, whether it's actual financially pay for it or if affect their lives in some way. So like I said, my fire department is awesome. They send extra people to help lift me, and they're very understanding, very compassionate people, and I truly cannot say enough good about my local fire department. So I was transferred I was taken to my local ER, and then they got approval they have to get approval from my insurance before they can send me out of state, which they did. And I went out of state, went to the hospital, was treated, and then I was being released to come back home, and I was coming back home via ambulance. And when the ambulance company showed up, it was 2 men, and the first time when I was released from the hospital, the ambulance company came, and there was enough people. I think there were 4 or 6 guys, and they strapped me in very well. The head of the ambulance company, or the manager that came, he even showed the other ambulance people, the EMTs, how to strap somebody on a stretcher that is my size to transport them safely. Everything went really well that time, the first time. So the second time when these two guys showed up, as soon as I knew that there were only two of them, I got very nervous. And I asked them, I said, is this, is there anybody else coming to help you guys? I think that we need more people. And they both assured me, no, everything will be just fine. We've got this, don't worry. Everything is fine. There was a younger guy and there was an older guy. Both of them were just average sized men. Not that size of people matter, because like looking at me, you'd think maybe that I might be strong, but I am just completely fat and I have not good muscle tone. So you can't really judge a person by their size, whether they have good muscle tone or not. So they assured me that everything would be just fine and everything would be okay. So I trusted them. That was my first mistake. I should not have trusted that they would be able to transport me safely. I should have demanded that they, get more help and not let them take me without further help. So, they loaded me onto the stretcher, and they weren't able to properly secure me on the stretcher because they didn't bring expanders to make the straps long enough. So he said that that was the best they could do, but it would be just fine. It would be a short trip from my hospital room to the ambulance, and then once I was in the ambulance, everything would be fine and it would be no problem. I was still nervous. It's not comfortable. I don't know. I've never been a normal size laying on a stretcher, but I can tell you that being my size laying on a normal size stretcher is not comfortable. And the thought of being dropped off of a stretcher is very frightening. So I was nervous. So, like I said, they loaded me onto the stretcher. The safety harnesses did not fit correctly. My legs were not harnessed in. My top was barely harnessed in, but I was holding on just slightly around the chest, and my legs were not secured at all. So we left the hospital room, and just going through the halls of the hospital, I felt very insecure, and a couple times I felt like I was shifting on the stretcher, and I got very nervous. But we made it out of the hospital okay, and they tell you don't reach for anything, don't move, stay still. And the ambulance that I was sent home in, usually I'm sent home and I'm transported in an ambulette, which is, or I guess, I don't know, maybe it is a bariatric ambulance. It's a larger ambulance where there's more room for the guys to move around in, more room for you inside the ambulance, for me, for my size. But it was just a normal size ambulance, a very small one. It seemed even smaller than my fire department ambulance that I usually am transported in. So the ambulance, our local fire department does not have a mechanical lift on the ambulance. They actually have to manually lift me in. So the ambulance that I was brought home in had an mechanical lift where they engage and click in the top of the stretcher, and then the ambulance itself raises the stretcher, and they just have to guide it, and it loads itself. So they had trouble getting it to engage, to lock up, and finally they did. They were able to get it clicked on and clicked in, and he told me, he said it was going to be a very tight fit and that he was sorry that he couldn't accommodate me more, but they would try to do what they could, and as soon as I was in the ambulance, it would be okay and I could move around. I couldn't get off the stretcher, of course, because first of all, there was no room to get off of it for me because it was very crammed. But I could move my legs or whatever to get comfortable on the stretcher. So they got me into the ambulance, got me locked in. I wasn't locked in completely because the stretcher did shift quite a bit while we were going around curves and bends and bumps, whatever. And just to give you a little bit of a reference, the guy didn't have enough room to walk between me and the bench. He had to come in the side door, and then stayed in the seat above my shoulder. There was a guy driving, and then the other guy stayed above my shoulder in the seat. He monitored my blood pressure, and that they have to, I guess, on the way home. I was released from the hospital, so I don't know why they had to do it, but they did. So during this trip, the older guy was the guy that stayed in the back with me. The younger guy drove. And a couple times, the older guy nodded off because he dropped his pen a couple times, and then he dropped his keys a couple times. And I could tell that he drifted off, because you can tell when someone drifts off. You can tell the difference between someone just drops something, and when someone kind of like nods off and then, you know, kind of like shakes themselves awake. So, like I said, it was about an hour drive. It was a little more than that because it was in kind of rush hour. It was around 6 o'clock. And in this bigger city, even into 7 o'clock, it's still a lot of traffic. So we got back to my apartment building. It was around 7 o'clock. And we pulled into the driveway. They pulled up. And of course, there was quite a few people outside because it was September. It was still warm weather, and a lot of people were sitting out front. And that's always makes me self-conscious anyhow, because I just don't like people to see me being transported, taken out of an ambulance and whatever. So after they parked, the younger guy, he took my apartment keys. He said he would come up and get my wheelchair, and he would bring it down, so then they could just unload me off of the stretcher, and then I could stand up and get into my wheelchair, so they didn't have to take the stretcher clear into the building and up the elevator and all that. So I said that was fine. And so I waited there, and the older ambulance driver opened the back door, and he was chatting with some of the other people. And I was like, this whole trip I had been moving my legs around. I was not secured on this stretcher whatsoever. And the younger guy came back with my wheelchair, and they proceeded to pull me out, and they started to disengage the ambulance, or the mechanical part, how it like, I don't know the exact terminologies or how it works, but how the mechanical aspects of the ambulance works. It started to unload me, and the guys were still talking, chatting with the other people. I got almost halfway out of the ambulance. One guy was standing at my shoulder, the other guy was standing at the bottom of the foot of the stretcher, and I said to them, I think I'm tipping. And just as I said that, the whole stretcher with me on it tipped to the left, and my arm was caught, and I heard it pop as I went down. The whole stretcher tipped to the side. I landed completely on the ground. The older guy that was at my side, I don't know, it happened so fast, and everything was such a blur to me. I don't know if he tried to catch me in the stretcher. I don't know if the stretcher knocked him over. I'm not really sure what happened, but he was knocked over as well, and he hit his head on the pavement. So there I am on the ground, half off the stretcher. I'm half on the stretcher. I'm caught on the stretcher because, like I said, the top part of me was half harnessed on. My legs were not buckled on at all. And my arm popped. So I'm on the ground, halfway on the ground, stretcher on its side. Luckily, well, not luckily, thankfully, one of my friends here in the building, he rushed over and was holding my head because he was afraid I was going to go into shock, because they said I hit my head on the ambulance door. I didn't feel me hit my head, or I never had any dizziness or headaches or any head problems from that. I can't say if I did or not, because like I said, everything went so quickly. So they had to call the fire department because this guy, the one EMT, had hit his head. So the fire department came, and they sent enough guys to take him to the hospital, to our local hospital. And then they had to get a, I'm not sure what they call it. They couldn't lift me up by my arms because my arm was hurt. So they put me on one of those, I don't know, it's a canvas thing with handles on it, and they like lift you up on the canvas. So they lifted me up and put me on the stretcher and then put me back on another ambulance to take me back to the hospital because my arm was very badly hurt. So I got back to the emergency room back here in town, and the guy, it was, oddly enough, it was the same doctor when I was taken the first time, and he remembered seeing me. He was like, "Weren't you just here?" And I was like, "Yeah, I was." So I had my shoulder x-rayed, and, you know, they looked at it and everything and determined that it was probably a partial tear of my rotator cuff, and I was in extreme pain for about 5 months. I couldn't lift my arm above my head. I couldn't even put my hair in a ponytail. I was in severe pain, and it was excruciating pain that I was in. And the ambulance, the one EMT, he hit his head, and he was, I found out afterwards, off work for a number of months because of him hitting his head. So it went back and forth between the insurance company. The insurance company contacted me. Well, the EMT company, the owner of the EMT company contacted me and left me a voice message, but I did not speak with him. My family urged me to get a lawyer to sue them. Not just my family, friends also did, because everyone here at the building saw what happened. Well, not everyone at the building, everyone that was outside saw what happened, and they said that they agreed that there was absolutely no way that 2 guys should have been unloading me off of a stretcher. Plus the one guy, the one EMT, the one that got hurt, he is the one that had dozed off in the ambulance to begin with. And a few people said that there was something wrong with him to begin with, whether he was, I can't even speculate what would have been wrong with him, whether he was on some kind of a substance, or if he was tired, or what was wrong. But there was definitely something wrong with this guy before he even unloaded me from the ambulance. So I was eventually contacted by the insurance company for the EMT service, and I met with the insurance adjuster that represents the EMT company, the ambulance company, and the ambulance company did take responsibility for what happened, and I was reimbursed for my pain and my suffering and my medical bills. But long story short, it was an embarrassing story. It was the most embarrassing thing that has ever happened to me, I feel. But it also goes to show you that you can't trust just because they're EMTs and they have been trained. Don't let someone if you feel uncomfortable, don't settle, and don't just think that they're going to keep you safe just because they're trained in what they're doing. You have to be your own advocate. You have to push and stand up for yourself and make yourself be heard, because you're the only one that's going to keep you safe. In looking back, if I would have insisted that there be more people to keep me safe, there wouldn't have been a problem. Like I said, my fire department has transported me quite a few times. They always send enough people that there has never been an issue. The company that brought me back from the ER after I had had my shoulder x-rayed, they sent enough people that there was nothing happened. So this was all, as the ambulance company took responsibility for it, it was because there was not enough people to handle someone my size. I don't know why these 2 ambulance EMTs wouldn't have seen someone my size and known that they could not handle me, just the 2 of them. It's very obvious that someone my size needs extra people to help. So, like I said, I hope this story help someone else to be your own advocate. Don't settle for just what people tell you because they are medical professionals. If it's something that doesn't make you feel comfortable, if you feel that there is something else that you need to make yourself feel comfortable, definitely speak up and don't let them tell you what you need for yourself. You say what you need for yourself and what makes you feel comfortable. So there's my story. Like I said, very embarrassing, but a very good lesson as well. So that's what I wanted to share with you on Storytime today. And that's it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye, everyone.